there's Hugh.
No,
Hugh is a Boise, Idaho resident, and he works in watercolor and has done so since the early 1980s. His favorite subjects are the landscapes of Idaho's scenic alpine canyon and rivers, as well as fly fishing subject and street scenes. He's received a number of awards. He's a signature member of the National Watercolor Society, the Transparent Watercolor Society of America, Northwest Color Society, and Watercolor West, as well as the California Watercolor Society, and a distinguished merit member of the Idaho Watercolor Society. He's been published in Splash 17, and need I say more? Here's Hugh, and he's going to show us how to paint a Idaho landscape.
well, thank you, Liz, and thanks to the California Watercolor Association for this invitation. I'm really looking forward to it. I hope everybody learns something. Sometimes I learn something myself, even though I paint the same subject over and over sometimes. But I thanks to Michelle and Liz for helping set everything up, get the cameras in the right position, and so forth. So I hope it goes well, and I hope everyone enjoys this and has some fun with me. I think just preliminarily, I'll describe a little bit of the materials I'm using. The paper is going to be a Stonehenge Aqua cold press paper. It comes in a block, and it's a heavy paper. This particular block, 300-pound. I like that for plein air work. I like it for just doing demos like this because you don't need to clamp it down or tape it. And it's a 12 by 16 size. Usually I like to work with a half sheet, but this fits the camera setup a little bit better. And hopefully everybody will be able to see it. And I think the lighting will work, at least from my viewpoint. It looks like the lighting is going to be okay on this. My palette is there, and the colors that I usually use and we're using tonight are for the blues. It's usually just ultramarine, cobalt, and cerulean. I think I put some pyrrole red in the reds, along with alizarin and burnt sienna. I think it's burnt sienna light, but to be honest with you, I sometimes use burnt sienna, sometimes burnt sienna light. I think they both may be in there, so I probably got a mixture of them. The yellow is Hansa yellow light, and I also have some quinacridone gold and yellow ochre. So those are the main colors that I'm going to use. There's in my palette, I usually have some titanium white and some well, I forgot what it was. I think it's got it here. Yeah, some neutral tint. I use that usually instead of a different gray. And so I'll probably keep the colors pretty simple for this demo. The brushes that I'm going to be using, I've got a whole collection of old brushes. The one that I probably will use the most on this painting is this a 2-inch. It's kind of a beveled or angled 2-inch brush. It's an old brush I bought from Zoltan Szabo. Some of you may be familiar with him, and I had gone to one of his workshops and liked this brush, and it's held up well over the years. It must be, I don't know, 25, 30 years old. I use some of these old brushes just primarily to get paint out of the paint box, and to mix with, just keeps from wearing some of my other brushes out. I will use some of these rounds, maybe not a lot on this particular painting, but I do paint with these a lot. this size flat brush, and then a couple of better quality Escoda brushes for small work. But probably 90% of what I'll do will be using the larger brush. Sometimes I will also use a palette knife like this to scrape or to make branch shapes or any kind of calligraphy in line. This works pretty well for that. You could use almost anything. I know people that use credit cards and get about the same results. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I think this reference photograph was distributed. If not, this is the reference photo that I'm going to be using. It isn't really a great photograph. You might ask, well, why did I choose it then? And as I look at it now, I'm not sure, but I love this particular area. It's the South Fork of the Boise River, just a little bit south of Boise. It's a great fly fishing river, so it always brings back fond memories for me when I paint something that's associated with that. But the shapes of the canyon wall on the other side, some of the contrasting lines in the painting is what I think really drew my attention to this. I think this will be probably a good example of how to work around a photograph that isn't really good. So, I mean, from a compositional standpoint, I can't say a lot of good things about this particular photograph. So one of the challenges is to take some of the things that I like and try to transform it into a composition that works a little bit better for a painting. I think what I'm going to try to do is to keep the background light area in a cooler tone, and then put some contrasting darker values in front of it with some different lines going into this area here. I'll probably move that a little bit away from the corner, which is actually part of the river there, and keep this area fairly light, maybe try to juice it up a little bit with some colors that will pop out, because most of it is going to be more of a neutral background and neutral colors, and keep just a few brighter ones in this particular area. So at least that's my game plan. Most of the time when I'm going to do a painting, if it's something especially I'm not familiar with, I'll do a value study. And so I did a couple of that scene. They're both slightly different, and in doing them, I discovered that there are things about both of those I didn't like real well. So I'm going to try to maybe take the things that I like and combine them into a painting that hopefully will work. I don't do value studies this a lot. Actually it's a watercolor canvas, which is kind of fun to use with just Payne's gray to get your shapes established, and it stays nice and flat when you paint on it. But sometimes I'll just use the back side of a watercolor paper or sketch with a pencil. And there's a lot of different ways you can do this, but I think it always helps a little bit you can go through some things and say, okay, well, I don't want to do that, or I want to change this, and instead of just doing it on your paper. I don't always do that. Sometimes if I just want to paint and have fun, I just go for it and work with it as I go along. But I suppose if I look at the paintings I've done, the ones that usually turn out best are the ones that I've done a little bit more planning for. So with that, I think we can get started. If anybody has any questions at any time, feel free to ask. I can paint and answer questions at the same time. So,
or you can put them in the chat.
Or in the chat. Okay, will that come up for me to see?
Well, I can relay them to you.
Okay.
We have a ton of questions.
I'm sorry, you have a question?
No, if we have a lot of questions,
okay,
you can put them in the chat and I will then ask you.
Okay. Well, let's get started then. I'm going to draw this out first, and I'm using it's actually a watercolor pencil for this, which I don't normally do, but I thought if I go kind of heavy with this, you can see what I'm doing a little bit better than if I just used a soft leaded pencil.
Okay.
So
Spotlighted you over the, oh, shoot, did the wrong thing. Never mind.
okay, you ready?
Ready.
Okay. So I'm looking at my reference photograph, and I can put this out front if that helps a little bit so you can see it. But I'm thinking that the area with some of the river in it is going to be down in this area where I'm pointing now. And I can just make a kind of a darker horizon line in there to give me that reference, and maybe have some edges coming in on both sides. I think I'll take this right across the bottom of it. And there'll be some foliage. And this side here, is that showing up? Oh, yeah, I guess it is. Is just going to be very loose.
Yes, it is.
Representing a tree or something over here. It doesn't really matter. And then we're going to have kind of a line with the hill on the left coming in this way. And as far as the background canyon or cliff area, I think I'll have it touching up here at this edge. Let's start down here. I think I want that about right in here. Obviously, you know, when you're painting a landscape, the shapes don't have to be very specific, especially on something like this, because you know, this could be a lot of different places. And I'm not interested in getting it exactly like it is. I'm just interested in catching some of the key things about it. So at least somebody looking at it would know this is a canyon wall. One of the things I struggled with in my little demos was whether to have shadows going across this canyon wall or not. And I'm going to leave that decision to the end, because sometimes I need that to make it complete, and sometimes I don't. I think over here, I mean, there's some mountain shapes in the background and maybe a tree or something. It's going to be very loose and maybe even blend some of that out. Now in this area, I'm going to try to develop some colors and also some darker values to balance against the canyon wall. I'm probably going to have in my value studies, I did some tree shapes that just came in all the way down here like that. And I kind of like that. It leads into the area that I want people to look at. And I like sometimes the balance of having some calligraphy in front of a lighter area. So maybe two tree shapes here. These are going to be dead, more or less dead trees with branches coming off of them. And then I think I'm going to have maybe like a pine tree or something right there that's also going to probably connect some darks here and here. And then we're going to have a few more dark shapes. I don't even know what they'll be. They may be trees, maybe one more here. And then to balance these lines, I had another, I don't want to split this right in half, but let's just say there's another tree here. So I've got those leaning that way to counteract some of that movement. I'm going to have on this reference photograph, you can see there's areas of debris that come down the hill. So we've got some nice lines going this way. We'll have a few there. And then there'll be some shadows off this canyon wall. This area will be fairly nondescript, I think. We'll have a few shapes in there just to break it up. maybe a few areas that won't be quite as dark. Okay, well, that's about all I need. And I think those lines look like they're showing up okay. So I'll give you an idea, at least, of the shapes that I'm going to follow. So I think I'll start off here. I'm going to mix up some color and begin keeping most of it fairly light in value and cool in color for most of the background here. And then as we progress, we'll start blending in some other colors just to give it a little bit more interest. So I'm going to start with just taking some cerulean blue. I'm going to take a little cobalt. I've got a little bit of water here at the bottom. This is just an old butcher's tray that gives me a little bit more mixing room than my paint box does. And I want to get enough water in here so it's not too dark. Okay, that should do it. I'll use these sponges. I usually keep them next to me so I can kind of alter the amount of water that's in the brush, and also use the tissue. I can use that on the brush too. Again, if I'm getting too much water or not enough. So I'll start off with this this big flat brush, and I'm just going to lay in that cool color. This block is on a slight incline, not very much of one at all, but just enough so that it'll pool a little bit.
Hugh, can you put your image up next to it so we can see it while you're painting the photo? Put it up, maybe up above. Yeah, like right there.
Right there, I've kind of
Yeah.
moved it.
And is your surface tilted
It is slightly.
slightly? Okay.
Yeah. Is it
No, that's perfect. We just want to know.
okay. And I think I'll mix a little bit of burnt sienna in a few places, just to give this a little bit of contrast. Like this flat brush, it doesn't hold a lot of water, which is a downside, but I get some nice brush strokes with it. And sometimes I'll leave those so they'll show through, and at this stage none of it will probably show through, but later on I'll probably have some that will. So I'm mixing a little bit of the yellow with some of the red. I'm going to drop a little bit of that warmth in a few places, just spread it around a little bit. I think I want a little bit more of the yellow in there. So I'm just going to put some down in here. If you hear people laughing in the background, it's my wife's book club. They're upstairs. I hope they don't get too rambunctious. Just going back, and I'm getting a little bit more cobalt blue and mixing it out with fairly neutral kind of wash in there. Can you guys hear the book club?
Yeah.
Can't.
No, I have not been able to hear the book club.
All right.
I want to hear the book club.
Hugh, I think it's filtered out like the hairdryer.
Oh, I wish that were only true. Oh, I better be careful. My wife might watch this later on.
Yeah, you better be careful.
watch what I'm. All right, well, I'm gradually warming this thing up a little bit. Little bit of burnt sienna. Got a little bit too much of the red on there right now, but I'm gonna grab some of that burnt sienna. Maybe a touch of the quinacridone. Yeah. Let's see, I think I need some right there. And right across here. And then let's put a little bit of that warmer. I don't think I want to leave that river area white, but I do want it to be a very light value. So I'm just going to get that wet. And that's about it. Okay. So that's about all I need for the first wash for the undertones. So let's test out the hair dryer and see if it is canceled out or better. Just take a minute to get this thing dry.
Oh yeah, I need to get one of those hair dryers.
So is, Hugh, is that brush natural hair or synthetic?
They're almost all synthetic. I don't even know what's in this Sultan Zabo brush, but it feels like a synthetic to me.
Okay.
The only ones that I have that are not the two Escoda brushes.
Yeah, those are nice brushes.
Okay, that's not completely dry, but I think it's good enough. A little bit wet there, but let me just take it over. Okay. So that first part is, as you could tell, pretty simple, pretty basic, just kind of blocking in areas. As I look at it, the canyon wall here turned out a little warmer than what I wanted. It's pretty neutral. And so I think I'm going to add a little bit more blue to that. This next stage to establishing a little bit darker light areas and starting to approach some of the middle values is probably going to be the most important one up until we start putting some darks in. So I need to, again, go back to my references and just think about where I'm going to put something and not only what color it's going to be, but what value it's going to be. And that's where having a very good value study helps. The value studies that I did, which I showed you earlier, this one to me looks too dark. It's not, there are not a lot of midtones in there. This one is a little bit better there, but it too has a lot of darker areas in it that with color would probably work, but as a value study, I'm not real keen on it. I think if I do that again, I'm probably going to try to lift some areas to lighten it up and create some shadow or some movement across here. But let's motor on here and see what happens.
So Hugh, can you put your photo back? People are really want to see what. There you go. And you left some white spots on the center of that painting. Was that on purpose?
No, completely by accident.
Okay, so no special reason for it.
No, no, I just missed a few areas, but when I see something like that, the first impulse might be to just get rid of it. But I think you need to resist that because the fewer brush strokes I make on this, I think the better. And that is going to be right in the middle of the painting. And I have no doubt that I'm going to be covering that up. So it doesn't really bother me. But sometimes just that little variation right there in different areas can add a little bit of interest to the painting. And so I'm not real anxious to get rid of some of those, even though I know that one's going to go away because it's like a bullseye right there.
Thank you.
All right, so I want a little bit lighter, cooler areas here. I think I'm going to put, I'm going to put some over here. This could be a mountain shape. I don't know. Doesn't matter. And I think I'm going to start pulling a few of them in here as well. I'm just going back and getting a little bit more of that cobalt. These little areas, I think I'm going to try to leave some of those light because it gives a suggestion of rocks or canyon or shadows there. I don't want them all evenly spaced. I want to have some sort of a pattern, but they can't be all the same distance across there. I think it'll draws a little bit too much attention if it does that. Okay. Now, at some point, I'd like to, I'm going to drop a little bit more color just in a few places just to maybe give that a little bit more interest. At some point, I like to see if there's some edges that I want to keep hard or to change. And I think it's important for me anyway, in a painting to alternate that a little bit, not make everything hard. And so there's a couple of different ways you can do that. You can just take a tissue and pull some like that to kind of get rid of that edge. You can certainly take a spray bottle and let's hit this over there, and that's going to loosen it up. And I want to make sure there's no paint on this brush when I do this, but just taking a brush with a little bit of water on it and pulling it away is going to create a loose edge. And if it's too dominant or you don't like it, you can always take a little bit of it up with a tissue. Now, this stuff in here, some of that is okay because we're talking about rocks and there can be a lot of irregular shapes up there, and so some of that doesn't bother me. I'm taking the edge of my brush, and they can make a nice line with it like that, and so a few lines in there is not a bad idea. I'm going to go back and get a little bit more cobalt. I don't want it to get, there's a touch of ultramarine in there too. I don't want it to get too warm up there because I want some contrast with the warmer colors that are going to be down below. Now, that shadow that went across the reference photo, I do want that, and I just want to be careful I don't get this too dark though at this point. Now, there were some nice kind of gold or warmer tones in there, and just to experiment, I'm going to take a little bit of this cobalt and see what would happen. Well, let's see. I'm thinking this through as I'm doing it. Before I do this, I'm gonna make some of these diagonal lines like that are on the reference photograph. I'm just gonna pull some of that down. Again, trying to change the interval. There goes my bullseye in the middle. Now, I don't really care for that right there. And some of these are a little bit too wild, but I think I can keep some of that. I'm going to put a little bit more blue on there. And some of this will just come down because of the slant. A little bit here. Okay. Now there's always a balance. Getting the value right is whether that these areas where the light is hitting the canyon walls is too light or not. Right now it looks too light to me, but as this dries, that the contrast is going to be reduced quite a bit. So I'm not going to change it, even though I don't really like the look of that at this moment. All right, now let's pull this down a little bit more. This area here is going to just be a neutral area, but I do want some warmth. So I'm taking a little bit of burnt sienna. I'm going to put it in here like so. And I'm going to do the same thing in some of these areas here. And I want to echo a little bit of that. I'll take another brush. I'm going to take a little bit of this gold or warm yellow ochre and a little bit of that quinacridone gold. Put it in there. And then I'm just going to pull some of these together and leave a few light shapes in a few places. I'm just doing this randomly. I mean, there's nothing in my reference photo that would suggest this, but it's something that I think will add a little bit of interest. And I can always cover that up later if I don't like it. And let's see now, I wanted a tree. Just so that I remember there's a tree, I'm going to do this. And I can use some of this gold in that area. Okay. Now I've got decisions to make. You know, I really like the way this little blue kind of echoes, a little piece of blue in there, echoes the color in the background. I think right now I'm going to leave that there. I've got some fairly decent mid values established. One thing I have to resist is going too dark. If I make one consistent mistake, it's usually going too dark too fast. And in an effort to add some drama or some interest to the painting. You know, this is kind of weird. I feel like I'm talking to myself. I kind of forget that somebody else is there, but it's just my thought process at this point is evaluating where this thing is and where it's going and what else I need to do. Usually when I'm at that stage of a painting, it's a good idea to let this dry for one thing, because as I said, I think some of those values are going to change quite a bit once it dries. So since I'm not sure what to do, let's dry it off and see how it looks. So I'll do that again. I'm going to pick this up so it doesn't blow away.
Okay.
One thing I can do though, that I wouldn't do this normally with this painting, but since this is a demo, and some of you might be interested in what this palette, how I use this palette knife and what I do with it. I could easily make the same kind of marks here with the palette knife, just pulling it down and making kind of shapes like that. I kind of like this better because it's a little bit darker value than that. But and I can do the same thing over here if I wanted to make some rock shapes. I can do that if I wanted to make a tree shape here or part of one here. I'm probably going to end up covering those up, but it's kind of a handy tool for me to play around if I want to take some of the paint away. It obviously works a lot better when the paper's wet like it is right now. But even if I dried this, I could spray it again with this bottle and get some of the same effects. So let's go back and get it dry. Okay, that's not bad. One thing you notice if using the palette knife, you need to be a little bit careful of getting this result right here. Where you pull it down, you have a little pile or pool of the pigment you just scraped off. And usually that's not an issue, but if it's wet enough, you can usually just pull that up with the tissue if you get something like this. One of the beautiful things about a landscape is that things like this don't really matter. They don't bother me that much. I mean, somewhere that dark shape will fit onto a landscape, and I'm probably going to darken this up a little bit anyway. So it's not a big issue at this point. So now that it's dry, I can evaluate the mid-tones and some of the lights a little bit better and try to think what to do. You know, I was kind of enamored with some of these little shapes up here, and now this whole area up here. I certainly didn't want somebody looking up here in the corner. So I don't want anything that's going to draw too much attention to that. But what I'm doing is balancing some interesting little shapes that could be attractive in a place with something that's going to draw too much attention from the rest of the painting. And that kind of balance, you do that back and forth on almost every part of the painting. Is it helping the painting or is it hurting the painting? Right now I'm leaning towards hurting the painting. I think these right here are just a little bit too much. I don't really need those, I don't think, in this particular painting. And so I'm kind of inclined to get rid of that. Now, as far as the darker shapes across this canyon, I think before I do that, I should develop a little bit darker values across here and here, because once I've done that, this may come into play a little bit nicer than it is right now. I wanted some movement here and here and here and some movement here. I'm going to have that when I do this tree, and that'll have to be done last because it's going to be a little bit darker value over the light value that's there. Yeah, so I think the next thing is to just mix up a little bit heavier dose of pigment. I'm going to go with ultramarine blue. I'm going to take some burnt sienna and put it in there. And then I want a little bit of color. And I'm thinking a little bit of red, a little bit of yellow to give it kind of an orange tint. I think that might look okay in a few places here. So let's put that in first. And the question is where. This is probably going to be covered up, but just to test it, it's pretty bright. But I think right here, not a bad place to put some. And then I hear somebody groaning in the background. A little bit here. And like that there. Okay. So now we can pull some of this out, so it'll dull it a little bit. And I'm going to do the same right here. I'm just pulling this brush with mostly water on it to soften it slightly, not completely, but just connect it there. This is probably going to be dark behind here, so I'm not too worried about that. So now I've got a little bit of color in there, and let's go back and add a little bit of dark value if I move my reference photograph. Is that back where you can see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this is really dark here on my reference photo. I don't want it that dark, or at least not solidly that dark. So I'm going to start off with a few areas just to kind of test. I think I wanted a tree here, so let's make a tree shape. And that's certainly not as dark as I can go, but it's darker than what's there. It's actually, I think I need a little bit more, a little darker than that. Let's just see, I'll put some in there and see how that looks. Yeah, that's a little better. Again, it's going to dry longer. So I wanted something there. Top of that tree, it looks a little weird. Oh, that's where I pulled that. There, I kind of got rid of, when I pulled down with a palette knife, it got rid of that part of it. So I can't have just one dark shape. So I want to blend in a little bit right here. And connect a little darker shape. Yeah, it's okay. And let's get a little blue. These could be trees over here, doesn't matter. And yeah, I'm going to go right over the top of that. Maybe. I think I wanted another tree there. So let's put one more there. Let's see, this is, I wonder if that shape. I'm talking to myself again. Okay. Again, I think it needs to be a little bit darker, so I'm doing a little ultramarine and a little bit of that burnt sienna. I'm just going to drop some in a few places.
I like the way your trees are very free form shapes.
Yeah, they're not perfect trees, but what tree is, you know?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is answering one of the questions that I had before, which was, do I want to put some shadows across this canyon wall or not? And once I have these darker shapes in there, I'm starting to kind of answer that in the negative. I don't know that I need them, but these are going to dry lighter, and so we'll wait and see. I wanted something up here. I could leave this the way it is. I don't, over here in the corner on the side, I don't want anything that's going to draw too much attention to this area. What is this? Is it just a smudge? Is it a mountain? I don't know that it really matters. As long as it fits in with the rest of it, and it's not so strange that it's drawing too much attention. So I'm okay with it at the moment. I think I'm going to take some darker neutral though and carry it down. Let's start off with going right under some of these light areas to make a suggestion of a rock a little bit more and see what that does. Okay, and that's way too busy, I think. And when it's too busy, I usually take a little bit of water on the brush and pull some of that together. I'd like to leave a few of these, that first wash under painting the way it is. Some areas of light, you have to have that someplace. And again, that's the big, for me anyway, the big question I always ask myself is that, am I leaving enough light and not getting it too dark? Because that is my tendency. I guess every watercolor should know what their tendencies or weaknesses are, and that's certainly one of mine. Okay, so I'm getting rid of some of that stuff. Do I want that big light area there or not? For now, I'm going to leave it. I may want to get rid of that, but that doesn't look right there. Okay. Okay, so let's I keep saying don't make it too dark, and what do? I keep going to my dark paints. And I wanted to show you I think I need a little bit of something up here. Dark, dark, dark. A little bit of a pattern there. And let's just pull that off a little bit. The ladies are getting more animated upstairs. They must have a good book tonight. Okay, so those dark shapes are a little bit connected across here. I could probably put something in there too. So it's kind of a decent pattern going across there. I think I want to put a little bit of blue in some of these areas here. That will pop out the red a little bit. And that's almost pure pigment that I put on there. There's very little water in this. I'm just trying to make that a little bit cooler. Okay. Now I think I need just a few tiny little accents on the rock wall. So I'm going to go right behind some of these lighted areas and just have a few suggestions, darker crevices or shadows. And I still haven't decided for sure what to do up here, but let's lighten these a little bit. This is kind of an issue right here. I've got that tree going right up. I don't know if I have to take a look at that and see if that's going to be a problem. Some very subtle value changes in there. I could even pull that down just a little bit. I think I need this line, a few little suggestions along there. And let's see.
Hugh, there was a question in the chat about who influenced your artwork.
Well, I was fortunate enough to have a kind of a local mentor here in Boise. He passed away this last year, but he was a good friend and a good teacher. Dwight Williams is his name. And I started painting in acrylics. My wife got me an acrylic painting set. And when I came to Boise back in the early 70s, I really liked the way water and pigment worked on paper. And so I just went into watercolor at that point. And Dwight was a very good painter here in Boise, and went over to his house one winter in the evenings, and we'd paint together. And that really kind of got me going, perked my interest in it. And then after that, I took some workshops here at Boise State University. Not very much of that, really. And then through as I got more interested in watercolor, I looked up people like, Andrew Wyeth was, more of a temporary gouache kind of thing, but John Singer Sargent, and studied their paintings, looked at them. Some California artists, Sheets and Rex Brandt. I like their styles and their work. I was fortunate to take some watercolor classes through the Idaho Watercolor Association. They bring, like most watercolor associations, bring in a well-known jurist each year. And so I was able to do workshops with Robert Wade, Frank Webb, Alvera Castanet. Who else? I've seen some of Andy Evenson's workshops on YouTube, and I think I like his style and the way he handles the value studies. So, those are some of the people that I admired and liked. And I kind of, each time I go to one of these workshops, I come away with maybe one little piece of information or one thing I could try. Maybe it was the palette brush or something else, and gradually morph those into what I liked, the styles that I liked, the way I wanted to paint. So that's how I think developed my watercolor anyway.
Great. And you had mentioned you did take a workshop with Zoltan Szabo?
Yes, it was a plein air. Well, plein air when the weather was decent. I think it was over in the Oregon coast. I can't tell you the year. It was a long time ago. And he was the first one, I think, that taught me when you make a shape, just don't make it one color. Be sure to add other colors into it to add a little bit of interest. And I had never done that before. I'd always, if I put down one wash, it stayed like that. And so the idea of mixing pigments on the paper as you're putting them into your painting was something that I would credit him with getting me to realize that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So one more question. Is your palette also at an angle?
Well, this whole table that it's on has got a very, very slight 3-4 degree.
Okay, because I see the puddle at the bottom of your butcher tray, so must
Yeah.
be at an angle.
So it all slants down a little bit, and
Okay.
I like keeping a little pool of water here. I can pull that up and mix it as I want to, and it's so light. I mean, it's just kind of a mud mixture, but it's so light when mixed with the other colors that, you know, it's not going to be a problem, I think, keeping it there. And I let it dry there, and then I can use it again. You know, again, the palette knife, if I have an area like this that looks kind of flat and dry, I mean, I can put a few little shapes in there that give a little bit more interest. And I wanted to show you, tell you what, I'm going to show you how to use this, how I use it anyway, for some calligraphy shapes. But before I do that, I think I'm going to go ahead and put the tree things in, the tree shapes, because I wanted one right up here and another one over here, maybe a couple little ones here, and possibly one more going right up there. But I need to be careful how I'm dividing that space up. And I don't know about this. We'll leave that for the moment. But this one for sure, I want something that leads back into this area. And so I'm going to take this. I'm just taking my beveled flat brush. You could do this with anything. But I'm just, you know, putting these marks here like that. And I'm going to darken it in places. And, you know, it obviously shouldn't be a lot thicker up here than it is down here. So we'll remedy that. And I don't want it all the same color. It's kind of, it's just sort of a boring shape. And so I think you know, I can take my tissue and create what could be alterations with the sun on it, whatever. It's more interesting than just one solid block. And then I think it'd be a good time too to take a little color, maybe a little orange, and drop it into that thing and see what happens. I could go crazy here with a little bit more color, because this is certainly not a real colorful painting, but put some in there in a few places, and gives it a little bit more. I don't think I want that much color up at the top, but the rest of that's okay. And then on this particular tree, just to show you how I would use the palette knife, I take my palette knife and just put it into a little bit of water and pigment, and it holds a little bead on it, and I can put that in there and then pull that down. And I think these should be a little bit darker, so I'm going to take some ultramarine, mix that, especially right here. I'm going to darken this just a little bit. Could be another line here. You know, you can get carried away with this stuff, where all these little things like that get to be a distraction. So you need to be, I guess, mindful of that. You know, it's so much fun though. I just can't stop.
That is so cool. I've never seen anybody use a palette knife like that before.
Really? I mean, for me, it's a really easy way to make branch strokes. And now this one where I scraped it is lighter, and so I think I'll leave it like that, but I can still put some strokes, or even from here take it up like that, and do the same thing right there. You know, it makes a nice kind of stick shapes. If I didn't like it, let's say right here, that area that's it's hard to differentiate. When I turn my head from the glare, I can see it, but hard to differentiate the trunk from the background. If you wanted to change that, you could certainly do it by scraping and just bang, take that out. And now you've got a lighter area behind it. The problem is I kind of took out the background too, but it's going to be wet. It's going to blend together a little bit, but you can go back and put some of those real dark areas in there. So I've got a little variation there. I could do the same up here. I think it just adds, put little shapes in it like that. Adds a little bit of realism to that tree. So the old thing in watercolor, if you do one thing and you like it, then let's do something else until you ruin it. Trying to get a tree that is not exactly the same size, and let's do the same thing there. Lighten that up a little bit. Okay, now I wanted one more someplace. And so where do I want it? 1, 2, there's a pattern. I could put it there. I don't want 1, 2, 3. All right. So let's divide this up. Now, should I have it slanting in or out? Well, I can't decide. So let's make it straight. I'm going to go right up here. I'm going to take it up through the canyon wall, connect it here, and let's do the same thing. I think with a palette knife, we'll put a couple places. That's a big blobby thing there that won't work very well. And if you make a mistake like that where it doesn't look good, while it's wet, you can get rid of it so easily that you shouldn't be nervous about doing this, because now, do I really care that it's thick here and real thin there? I guess I'm saying to myself, no. I don't think that bothers me too much there. Now, it's going to go back to that area up there. And again, I'm looking at it and I'm trying to say, how bad is that? I think it wouldn't hurt this painting to have a little gradation similar to what my reference photo has here, slightly darker down into here, and it would get rid of that area. And I don't think that would hurt the painting at all. I did want to keep this pretty light, but let's just see what happens if I go with a pretty watery mixture and just go right over this. I'll leave the tree out of it. And maybe I won't get rid of all of it, but I want to just knock that stuff back a little bit. Something like that. And I want to go back to blue. Yeah. So some of those little light spots in there have been eliminated or knocked back a little bit. And I think that took care of the concern I had up here. There's still a few irregularities there, which is fine. The design, taking this tree right up into here, I'm not sure that was a good thing. I like the way these are standing out, but I think they're standing out too much.
Mhm. I agree.
See what I mean?
Yes.
And I got this tree going right up, says, here, look at this, and that's not what I want. I want them to look here. And so I'm saying to myself, let's get rid of that. So I'm just going to take a very light wash and go over part. I might leave a little bit, just a little bit. It's too much. This is just stands out a little bit too much. How are we doing on the time, by the way?
You have 45 minutes, Hugh. You're doing fine.
Okay. Well, I knew this would go pretty fast, but
Well, I like the way you think and that you think out loud about the process. I think that's really informative.
well, good. Yeah, it's sometimes when I see artists paint, a lot of times the question, well, why did they do that? And sometimes it's just sort of an intuitive thing that you don't even know why you do it. You just do it. And I'm kind of like that. Changing what I just talked about before, but I kind of like to just go on the feel of it as I see it. This line across here is kind of weird. It was, I think, where I scraped it and I've got something going off like that. It could be a part of the tree, but if it is, it's a real wild hair there. I mean, it's a branch that just does not look right. And so I can do some lifting, and I think I could take some of that off, which would probably be the best thing to try first. Or I could enlarge this tree and go right over the top of it and maybe take it up here. But because these two I should have altered the size and shape. I think I'd rather enlarge this one, because after all, it's a little bit closer than that one. And maybe even, or the other thing I could do to break this up is to put a third one in here and make it a different color. I mean, these are all possibilities at this point. I could still get away with that. Oh, I was thinking too of another line here. Let's just see how it looks and see if I couple of them in there. And is that really adding anything to the painting? I don't think so, but it's fun to do. Some of these little dark lines, it's almost like calligraphy. I think adds a little bit of interest in places. Yeah, the main thing I see is this thing right here. Is probably needs to be lifted out, and let me see if that's going.
Looks like a man saluting.
His arm up here like this.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't want that. No. All I'm doing is wetting that a little bit. I don't think it's going to work because I've got that palette knife mark on it, and once you do that, if it's wet, the paint will seep into there, and you cannot get rid of it. I could scrape it off. But that's going to really mar the paper pretty much. So you take a dark thing and go over it here. I don't know. Let me see how much. Yeah, I'm going right to through the surface into that. I don't think I want to do that. Now I'm going to enlarge that tree just a little bit. Kind of ruined the shape of it in a way, because they kind of had a more interesting shape, I think. And I don't want it to end too close to this point. I don't think that from a design standpoint would be a great idea. But you know, there's a lot of trees in here, so there's nothing wrong with putting another tree through that. And that will be another way to, I'm going to go above it, get rid of that spot. Either I'm getting rid of it or I'm drawing more attention to it. I'm not sure which. So I think I'm drawing way too much attention to this area, but that's all right. I'm going to put some color down here to try to compensate for them. So wait a minute, don't look up here, look back here, here. Keep a little bit of that orange there. Yeah, I like that red tree. Now it's drawing me a little bit more back into it, that red and blue contrast. Now the water, you know, if I didn't tell you that was a river, you might not know it is. And so, you know, maybe some reflections. I could pull some of that blue in here, and that looks a little watery, maybe not completely, but this is more like a beach over here or something, that little light spot. Yeah, it looks a little bit more like water, I think. Kind of lines across there. All right, let's dry this thing off and see how it looks.
Um, Leslie wants to know about repetition, about directions, like the diagonal trees. How do you avoid repetition?
Okay. I'm sorry, say that again.
Okay, how do you avoid, like the diagonal lines, how do you avoid repetition? You know, if you look at them, they're,
Pretty spaced equally.
yeah,
I think that's always an issue. Getting them spaced equally is not a good idea. And the distance here, here, and here is a little bit too much the same. I could vary a little bit by closing this distance by adding another tree. Maybe you're pulling this tree over a little bit. They are varied. This one, the size is not the same, and
Right.
this one is obviously a completely different shape than these. But yeah, it's a potential problem, and in this particular painting, I think that this would have been probably better off closer in here than where I put it. And you know, my drawing or value study had it somewhat similar to the way I did it. But my value study doesn't have this third shape in it,
yeah,
which is creating the issue that I think you're talking about.
yeah. So do you use non-staining colors primarily?
Primarily non-staining.
Okay. And then do you ever use a ground to cover up area and then painting over it?
No,
Watercolor ground?
no, I don't.
Okay.
If I wanted to put a few highlights in with titanium white, you know, I could do that in places. You know, I might want to put a person if I think that it needs something else. I might want to put a person in, like right here would be an area, or even a fisherman out there in the river.
Yeah.
Do that, a small figure right in here that might add, you know, again, you put a person in it that draws the viewer in, and I could
Right.
do that. Now, one thing that as I look at this a little bit more, I wanted to get this blue, dark blue in here to contrast a little bit with some of the warm colors that I put in here. It's a little heavy, I think. And so as long as we're doing a demo, it's pretty easy to lighten some of these dark areas up at this stage. And so I just put a little bit of water on it. And if it's not a staining color, usually it'll come up. If it doesn't, there, I got some of it up. And so there's a little variation. So it's not just one solid block of blue.
Yeah.
I think that helps a little bit. Now I could do the same thing on this tree right here. If I thought it was just too much of one thing, you know, lifting is not a bad way to correct some of those things without just throwing the thing away. Now the other thing I always look for when I get kind of to this point are there some edges that I'd like to lose, some things that I think don't look really that good. Now, one area of concern for me is this right here. You know, I got a little bit carried away with the calligraphy on my, and you know, maybe this is too busy, and so I could lift some of that off or reduce it a little bit. But you know, it's usually for me anyway. If I'm at a point and I really don't know what to do, and I'm waffling, I'll just leave the painting alone for a day or two, go back and look at it, and then a lot of times I'll see something at that point that I didn't see before and change it at that point. But there's still a lot that you can, you think of watercolors one go and that's it. And the really good watercolors that are perfectly transparent are like that. And mine rarely turn out that way. I mean, I'm usually playing with it and making adjustments. And I'll never know when it's finished. And so that's just one of my issues. And but it's fun. I like doing it. I think doing some lifting in a few places, I could probably do that right on this part of it. And there, I've reduced a little bit of that busyness there. I could probably do it here and here too. In fact, going up this area, that's too much up there, but those little variations I think can add interest to a painting.
So could you possibly remove that thin tree in the middle?
This one?
Yeah.
You don't like that one, do you?
Well, it's a question posed by one of the members.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't like it either. It's right in the middle of the painting, and it's not very big, but it's dividing the painting sort of in half, and it's spaced almost equally there. So let's try it and see what happens. I mean, I can certainly make it a little bit less in value. I'm going to take it up. That took it back a little bit, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that does help a little. Yeah, other than that, I think this would be one where I question whether this stuff in here is a good idea or not, but I kind of like it. There's similar shapes, light shapes here and here, and so they're making somewhat of a pattern across the painting, and so I'm inclined at this time to probably leave that. And so probably at this time I would just leave this alone until tomorrow.
So
And
then there's one more question about how you would add a fly fisherman if you wanted to do that. How would you do that?
well, I'll show you. I would probably the perspective on this would be important, and there's a good place for them right here. I've got a little light value right here, and how big he's going to be is kind of important. But I would probably say a guy about that size, got his casting arm out here. And we got some reflection coming in. And so this is the only time I'm probably going to use my smaller brushes. I would probably choose to make it warm to pop out some of the orange that's in there. So I rarely would see a fly fisherman with bright orange stuff on. So all the real fishermen out there would probably say, the guy's crazy. You're going to scare all the fish away dressed like that. And they'd be right. But for purposes of the painting, I think red is the way to go.
Maybe he just got done here deer hunting.
Yeah, deer hunting, he's gonna do a double here. He's
Yeah,
gonna,
he's
Day
having a
off.
he's having a super weekend.
yeah, that would be a good week. Well, I'm not much of a hunter, but they do, you know what chuckers are? They do chucker hunting in this canyon. It's kind of a game bird that's real popular.
Ah, they're kind of like doves, aren't they?
Yeah, they're, well, a little bit more like quail,
Okay.
but you have to be pretty hardy to hunt them because you got to walk up stuff like that. And so obviously the guy is not the center of attention of the whole painting, but he's in a good place here. And little reflection, I can put a little bit of that red here in the water.
Is your paper hot press or cold press? Cold press, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there, now you got a fisherman.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Well, we've got a little bit of time left, and if you want to see a few other paintings, I could show you some that are a little bit different kind of subjects than these. Should we do that?
Yes.
Very nice. Any
Is
other
that-
questions about the painting?
You ever use a rough surface paper?
Yes, I usually do use rough for landscapes. And this size, this cold press was all I had. But for the full sheets, I usually use water or Saunders Waterford rough, or sometimes Arches rough, usually at 140 weight. And for those, I'll normally put them on a board like this, and it's just sometimes I'll tape it, or usually I'll use just an alligator clip and put the paper on, clip it to the board in 4 places. And sometimes I'll wet the paper first, and most of the time I won't. I'll just paint it like I did. Now you get a little bit more waffling, of course, with 140 weight, but I found that usually you can take care of that afterwards if it gets too wobbly. You just wet the back of it, and then reclip it, and it'll dry flat. But this is the way that I usually paint, with half sheet sizes on a foam board like this. I usually do it standing up with setup I have for painting outside.
You mentioned Stonehenge paper. I'm not familiar with that brand.
No, it's I'll get a smaller piece here.
Okay.
This is a smaller block. I don't know if you can read it on there. This one's a
You need to put it on the table to see it, Hugh.
Okay.
'Cause there it is.
yeah. This one's also cold press. It's smaller. I get this from Legion paper. They're out of New York, and it's it's a nice paper. I like it, and I get this nice texture. It's very similar to, I think, Saunders Waterford in the way it feels. And even though it's cold press, you can see you get some texturing, granulation in it, but a lot more with the ones that are rough.
Mm.
Okay, so I'll show you a few other paintings. We
I
got
have
time
one more question from a
Oh.
member. That if you were to use white, where would you use it?
Well, I don't know. I'm pretty careful. Are you talking about using white
On this painting?
paint? Oh, like titanium white?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I don't know that I would use it on this particular painting, but
Okay.
I can show you just the effect that it would have. I would pick a place where it needs a little bit of interest. And depending upon where I think the light is, right here where this tree comes down and there's a kind of a lost edge here, I could put a little highlight right there. And again, if it's too bright, I'll just do that to soften it a little bit. So that gives me a little separation on that particular line. Like here, I could do that too. I don't like to use a lot of the titanium white. What I do use it for is sometimes if I want a real muted kind of soft blue or something, I'll mix it and create sort of a lavender effect. The other time places I would sometimes use it would be like on rock shapes. If you wanted to have a little bit of light hitting some of these rocks, the other thing I'm just noticing now that does not look very good to me. It's funny how you don't see this at first, but this hard edge right here really looks unnatural. I mean, it's from the shape of my brush, the way I used it, and sometimes I like those, but more on urban building shapes than in landscapes. And so I would not want to leave that hard line where it's at. And we know there's a river there. It's not a pond. It's got to go someplace. And so I think I would soften part of that. And I could soften it over here. So now we got a river moving someplace a little bit more. But I don't know about you, but that was, as I noticed that was kind of distracting to me. And these, you can see the titanium white dries a lot duller than it does when you put it down. I've got some pieces of white up here. And again, if I looked at this for a while, I'd probably want to soften or take those out. It's pretty easy to do, and you just put any kind of color on them, and I think that it'll reduce the there certainly could be rock shapes up there that are catching the light, so it's not a big deal. But okay, any other questions about this painting?
Looks great.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's there's always things that you do a little bit different afterwards, but at least that's gives you an idea of some of the types of landscapes that we have here near town, and the kind of painting I like to do with them. I don't know if it'd be easier to show this on the board here. This painting,
Show it on the board.
okay, yeah, that's as a half sheet, and that's as you can see a completely different kind of subject.
Nice. Is that you?
Yeah, that's my stomach is not nearly that big. I didn't flatter myself very much, but it was a lazy day in the afternoon, and that's my daughter's dog in there, and she took a picture of me, and so and you can see the flat brush strokes in this painting a little bit better. Up here, and a lot of edges in it that if you do enough, it doesn't look completely out of place. Now here's white. I mean, there's a lot of white in this. It's just paper white. Here's a fly fishing scene. Same canyon of the Snake River. And I used to do a lot of these. I don't do as much anymore, but because I really like to fly fish, I get kind of a vicarious enjoyment out of painting these things. Here's one that is kind of a snowy mountain scene. This area up here, I did a lot of that by lifting, and I might have used a little titanium white and water to get like this effect right in here and maybe up here. But most of this, I think I just did by lifting it out. And I was trying to create a, kind of misty winter mountain scene. Here's one I did kind of right out my back door, right out my studio. Just a very, very simple, quick landscape of tree shapes, and it was done in the fall, and I like the way the shadows came across the ground. Here's another kind of mountain river scene in central Idaho that I was trying to get some of the lost edges up here like we did on this painting. Few other places where there's a few lost edges. I like to have that combination with some hard edges.
Beautiful, beautiful.
There's
Hugh,
kind of
Do you plein air paint at all?
I do not as much as I do more of that in Mexico when we go down there. But I don't do as much as I really like to, and I've always learned something when I do very much of that, but I still do some. This painting, I'm gonna have trouble showing you this. It's a little bit bigger, but this kind of has a sad story to it. This is a watercolor I did of a hike up in mountain area up near McCall, Idaho. Late fall. There's a little bit of snow on the ground, but this painting was in the Idaho Watercolor Society show maybe 2 years ago. I'm not sure, and it was in the traveling show that went around the state. And there's a tragic car accident. A truck ran into the paintings. All the paintings in the traveling show were in a trailer going from East Idaho to North Idaho. And there was a truck accident. The guy was killed. The trailer caught on fire, and all of the paintings were burned.
Oh my gosh.
Whole traveling show. So this is actually a reproduction of it that somebody was willing to make from photographs that we had. So at least we had an image. But it kind of makes you think about how you insure stuff when you send it away to different shows. Because hardly anybody got, to establish the actual value of that painting without it being sold. It could be anybody's guess, and so it's very difficult for anybody to get reimbursed, other than maybe for the value of the paper.
Oh,
I don't know. Does the California Watercolor Association insure their paintings and traveling shows?
we don't do a traveling show. Ours are pretty fixed, but we do have them come in from all over the country. And I know the artists mostly insure their paintings while they're shipped.
Yeah.
And we do carry insurance usually at the gallery's request. But I'm not quite sure what that would cover, or how you again would evaluate what was in the gallery.
Yeah, I know it's a little bit pricey to do that, depending upon who's taking it and how and all that. But anyway, I thought I'd just mention that, so artists be aware that things like that can happen.
Yeah.
Well, I could pull out some more paintings, but I probably bored you with them already. So,
No, they're beautiful, but thank you, Hugh.
well, thank you very much. I've enjoyed doing this, and I hope those watching learn something.
Yes, you got lots of compliments in the chats. People really liked your demo.
Well, good.
All right.
Thank you, Hugh.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Right.
Thank you so much. It was great.
Oh, you're welcome.